Welcome back to the Fusco Auto Automation campaign. Last time I did a small refresh of our smallest car, the Rio Calto, and made the premium version of it under the Dolcevita brand. This time on episode 11 it's time for some bigger updates and brand new models. But first things first, in every car there is an engine and our engines need updating. 4-cylinder engine will be getting multi-point fuel injection as opposed to single point, which will increase both power and efficiency and even reliability, I think. The 1.8 liter will be making a respectable 87 horsepower. Meanwhile, the 1.5 liter engine will be making 65 horsepower, a small but nice bump from 60 horsepower. The V6 engine will also be getting electronic fuel injection as opposed to the old mechanical system, but the base model of it, the 2.4 liter, will be getting slightly cheaper cast headers instead of tubular. They may cut a bit of power, but it will help produce it more efficiently, and I'm going to use this a bit more than before. A 123 horsepower sounds good, one more than the old one and probably a lot more efficient. The 2.7 liter, which is a bit more exclusive, will get to keep the tubular headers to make that more power because it is a bit underpowered and we want to compete on the higher end with this one. This should do it for the 2.7 liter, 153 horsepower, about 7 more I think from the last one. It's better than getting just 1 more horsepower for sure. I'll now also be making a higher horsepower version of this. It won't be as economical, but it will do great in the sporty cars such as the SP27. I think 170 horsepower is a pretty nice number for now, and you get somewhat constant power at peak RPM. The first car I'll facelift is the U100 pickup and van, simply because it's very simple. Just took a look at the safety, and 35 is the minimum to sell everywhere, so this will do for now to keep it cheap and simple. The delivered version is also doing surprisingly well. The new engine has really cut its fuel consumption, and the emissions are looking good for now, so I don't have to worry that much. Though now that I notice, I think I need the West 7, and that's coming up pretty soon. Yes, putting it one point up here does the job. Because this pickup and van are somewhat light duty, especially in other places like Gasmia, I'm thinking about making a V6 version with a 2.4 in it to cater to more serious markets. As for the interior, I could also get a nicer radio in. To differentiate this trim and say it's a bit nicer, I've given it some stepping boards here, dual exhaust of course for the V6, fancy looking paint color. In terms of sales, it looks like the V6 version will sell better with the premium market for some reason, even if it's about a third of the price. I'll also update the Koala. It should be a pretty simple update, just a new engine and maybe a few design tweaks. I've now done quite a bit of optimizing and the stats turned out to be really well. A few tweaks I've done is only have a basic radio to save on some weight because it was comfortable enough. Added a rear spoiler so it doesn't get loose when going fast because the old Lucciola had a habit to do that. Oh, and a nice change, I've added ABS because I had the engineering time to do it, and probably added a quality point for the chassis actually too. And this is the design. It sure looks modern. It's packed with a lot of tech for the time. Only problem is the power, which will be solved with a more powerful version. This more powerful version will use the V6, the smaller one should be enough. Also put in a limited slip differential just to differentiate it a bit more and to handle the extra power. If I take a look at the sales, this new slightly more powerful model will really help bring in about as many cars as the base model. In terms of engineering, it will definitely be very manageable, even if I make the sliders better. Now I'll be replacing the SP1 with a brand new generation, which I'll call the SP2, of course. It is the Dolcevita sports car. As for the body, I'm going for this one, similar size to the last generation. Unfortunately, there's no convertible option, but it's the best there is for now. One change I'll make compared to the previous one is having it as a monocoque instead of a space frame. I will need to make a bigger factory, but this is huge for having more safety. I'll use the 170 horsepower engine and add in a fancy new limited slip differential, adding in some wider tires in the rear. This version will have just 2 seats and there will be another one with 4 seats. Sport interior because it's lighter and gives more sportiness. Don't forget to add in some quality, it's very important here. Manual steering because it will be pretty light, and ABS. I think I'll go with 80 safety. This will cost some tech pull and I think I can drop down the quality by a tick to help with that. After some tuning, it turned out pretty nicely, very good desirability in pretty much every market, and all that's left to do is design it. I'm done designing the new SP, and I think it's really the most beautiful car I've made in this campaign. Looks very modern, but still carries over some of that heritage. As for optimizations, I did tune up the engine to 186 horsepower, put in a twin throttle setup and a sportier intake. Now I'll make a Grand Tourer trim, which is a bit more comfortable and has some rear seats. So what I'll just do is put in an automatic, put in some rear seats, and maybe make the suspension a bit more comfortable. Looking at the sales data, this GT variant is definitely a good decision, even if it takes a bit more to engineer the car. While off camera, I've also added ABS to the pickup truck and van and the 1.8 version of the Koala. Since they were already being added to the engineering time, I decided to spread it across multiple trims just to get that extra drivability and to say I've got a lot of new tech. There's now one last car to renew, which is the LP and the Ryokato version. I'll be going with this body. It looks a bit like the SP I've just made, but it's a bit longer and it will take some design cues, but not all, because this has to look a bit more dull. The base model will still have the 2.4 engine, manual transmission. This is more for domestic markets like Frinia, and a fancier version will be made for places like Casmia. I think I'll go with a limited slip differential because of the last model there was some wheel spin even when taking off gently. Once again, I think I'll drop one quality point in the safety to save on some engineering time because I'm using some tech pool. And the stats are already pretty good, I just have to fix the suspension. But I could go for one body quality to help with rust and aerodynamics a bit. With the design of the LP done, which takes a lot after the SP, I've also made this higher trim, the 2.7 liter, give it some fancier chrome bits on the outside and put in an automatic transmission and of course the 2.7 engine. In terms of sales, it's looking sort of like before, kind of average, not bad, not good. However, this platform will benefit because the new Ryokato will also be based on this. It will get the 4-cylinder engine, the biggest variant, the 1.8, probably an open differential since power isn't an issue anymore, because for the V6 variants there was some wheel spin when I was going off the line. I could go for these tires which reduce fuel consumption, and for the interior of course I'll go standard and standard. This standard cassette may take quite a lot of tech pool and research time, so I'll just go for the 8-track. This does help justify some of the costs because these two aren't selling as well as I'd hope. I'm now done with the second generation Redenno, and it does look a bit unconventional with the grille at the front, but at the back it looks quite generic, so cheaper than the LP series. which it is supposed to be. But I've not just done that, I've also done the boring part, which is setting up the factories. So as you can see, it is going to cost almost 1.6 billion. The biggest expenses are making small medium factories for the SP and Lucciola, so I can use a unibody. And also for the V6 I've made a new factory since it's now in the truck as well, and I'm going to need a lot more V6 engines. The factory is 400 million. The old one was a medium and restricted, so now I've gone to a large one. I'm not going to take any loans. I've got that money in my pocket. I'm also going to start researching, for example, valve timing, VVT. I think I'm really going to need it in the future since engines are sort of underpowered and I don't want to make new engines just yet. I can also go for a bit more marketing to get some sales in the more premium sector. It looks like the Ryokato has finished its facelift, so I think I'm going to end this episode here. And in the next one I'll be facing it one last time, since I think it can go for a few more years. And the quality issue, I think I'll do a full recall. Before the episode ends, I'll do a quick test drive of all the new cars I've made. First off, the least exciting one, the Redenno. From how I've driven it so far, it's a bit slow, underpowered, but I think it could be fixed with a slightly better engine. So if this is 87 horsepower, maybe 110 could do the trick. Or watch out for potholes. But as a nice, comfy, but still affordable family hauler, it does a job on these bumpy roads. But yeah, I can slightly feel it being underpowered because I revved the engine without wanting to. To be fair, as I've said, it's handling these roads quite well. Maybe I'll do some off-roading. Let's see, the family lives in the countryside. Takes it pretty well. Oh, there's a bit of oversteer. So if you like rally, you can pretend you're doing some. It's not fast enough to really get you in trouble if you want to do the rally. And yeah, I took that bend really nicely. Now it's time for the Redenno's bigger and fancier brother, the Dolcevita LP. I'm using the one that has an automatic, a bit of wheel spin off the start, so the engine still wants to go right off the line. So as soon as I've started driving, I've noticed how much effortless this is. Before you really had to keep your foot in to make it go, or even to road speeds, but now I can just sit back, gently tap it, and know it will get to whatever speed I want. Taking this car maybe not as good, probably because it's heavier. It does feel a bit floatier, but again, that's a product of its weight. Now, not bad for the acceleration here. This is probably the speed you want to do, and it stays in low revs very nicely, under 2000. I can do highway speeds very comfortably, 2000 and a bit. Overall pretty premium. I hope it does well in sales. Only problem would be reliability from what I've seen. With the boring cars out of the way, now it's time for the sports cars. First off, the Lucciola, the cheap sports car, and it doesn't get that fast to 109 and a bit seconds, but once there are some turns, it will really shine. Like for example, through here it has grip, the rear end doesn't want to slip out, thanks to the spoiler I've added, and probably due to having good tires, big tires. If you keep your momentum, this thing flies. Around this bend, let's see, a bit of camber and downhill, yeah, does it no problem. And here, the story is the same. It feels neutral, maybe slightly a bit understeer, but it's super fun to just grip around like this. You think it can do a turn, but then you turn it and it can do it. A bit of rally again. I'll keep moving. If you find a good road, this is fun. And finally, the SP27, the brand new hot car, which set the design trend for the company. This has 185 horsepower, average maybe a bit below, but it makes up in weight. It reaches 100 in 6 and a bit seconds, 6.2, 6.4. This does feel wilder than the Lucciola because it has more power and there's only so much tires you can have. It will break the grip at some points. 170, almost 180. Now down this turn, let's see, yep, there, the grip kind of went away even with a limited slip differential, so we've got to watch out. This thing, it bites. You do need to be a bit better to drive this than the Lucciola, but it's alright as that's a mass market sports car, and this is for those who really know their stuff and want something a bit, actually a lot more powerful and capable. Even if it's not quite as perfect as the Lucciola, the SP feels so alive. I hope you've enjoyed the episode, and I'll see you in the next one where probably there won't be as many new cars, but I'll still try to make them exciting and interesting.